So welcome to everybody. I'm really glad you could attend this evening. We're doing a series of webinars through the fall and extending even after the application deadline into the winter. So stay tuned for more of these, and we'll hope to see you back again for some more. And again, if you missed it in the beginning, Eastman is also now open for visitors. So if you're able to come for a visit, we'd love to see you that way too. But tonight we're focusing on financial aid, how it works at Eastman, some generalities about how it works in general. You know, there's a lot to process, but every school is different. And as I'm sure you're starting to find out, and we just want to talk a bit about how it works here so you sort of know what to expect as you go through the process. And then this is just me, I can't talk about financial aid and costs without talking about what's on the other end. So we'll talk a little bit about career paths and what some of our alumni are doing, how successful they are, and why that might be, why our alumni are succeeding out in the world. So my name is Matthew Artizone. I'm the Associate Dean of Admissions and Enrollment here at Eastman, and I'm joined tonight by our Director of Financial Aid, Sherry DeNormand. So thanks for being here, Sherry. And to get started, you know, the overall theme obviously is sort of focused on, you know, what things will cost and what you get out of it in the end. And, you know, I think if you're a parent, you're maybe hoping things don't quite end up like this for your son or daughter. Maybe also hoping things don't quite end up like this. You know, who knew that, I forget the character's name, but he always wanted to go to music school. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. But maybe picturing something more along the lines of this, right? This is the dream. This is what a lot of us have in mind when we're picturing as a high school student what we want to do after college. And indeed, all of these are Eastman alumni doing their thing. We have Katie Lewick up in the corner here singing in the role of the Queen of the Night at the Metropolitan Opera. We have Third Coast Percussion down here doing their thing. They include, I have to be fair, a number of Northwestern alumni as well, but they all studied with Michael Burritt, so we'll just be clear about that too, including Sean Connors, who's an Eastman alum. And Jeff Thayer, principal or the concertmaster of the San Diego Symphony, and Leah Nabate, trumpet player, shown here actually back visiting Eastman playing with the jazz ensemble. We also have a lot of alums who are, I mean, maybe this is more along the lines of what you're picturing. You don't want to be necessarily in the spotlight, but you want to be teaching music, maybe working behind the scenes. We have plenty of alumni who have gone on to do that as well, including our own member of our theory faculty, Matt Curley, who actually went to Eastman for organ performance, just got really into theory while he was here. That's a thing that happens because we're really into theory here. Eventually went off and earned his PhD and is now back teaching theory for us. Alex Pena is a graduate of our viola program. This is him working with a program called ROC Music, ROC Music for City of Rochester, an after-school free music instruction program. He's now off in Hawaii teaching at a school in Hawaii. Did a music education and performance major here at Eastman. And this is an alum named Lisa Dixon. Lisa Dixon French. She's shown here teaching, doing her student teaching as an education major. And she did teach as a graduate, but is actually now the chief operating officer at the Nashville Ballet, of all things. So just another example of students going in different directions after their musical training. So that's just to sort of set the stage for a little bit more of what I'm going to talk about later. But right now we're going to get into the cold hard facts related to costs. We're going to start with the costs, and then we're going to jump quickly to financial aid and how we help you offset those costs. And then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about career paths. But to take us in the direction of financial aid, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry.
Hi, welcome. This slide is going to show you what we call the costs of attending Eastman. And the first thing I want to say is that nobody who comes to Eastman pays the full cost, because this is the prices before you see the financial aid. So don't let those numbers scare you. And we're going to get into how some more of that works. But so that would be the direct costs. And then, as you can see, the net price would be after the scholarship is applied. And we give you some of our average scholarships there, and they do range from $10,000 up to full tuition. You can get out onto our website and do the net price calculator, although that is very difficult to use as a tool because the audition plays a big part in how the scholarship is awarded. And obviously that's not something you can input into the system, but we do give you 3 different tiers of being able to estimate your award. So we suggest that you do all 3, so you kind of get a feel whether it would be like the highest award you would get, a middle range award, and then a lower award, so you can see how that all works. And one thing at all schools you should keep in mind is not to forget to include your indirect costs, which are books and supplies. So those aren't things that we bill you for, but you're going to need to do them. Personal expenses, transportation, home for the holidays and things like that. Okay. So some resources for how to fund your education. And this shows, based on the survey from Sallie Mae in 2019, what the average resources are for students going to schools. So outside scholarships is a big one, and that's something that you can all work on, or your students can work on now, applying for scholarships that you would be eligible for that could be applied to next year for the college that your student attends. There's borrowing, then there's savings, and all of those things come together to help the students afford college. Okay. Next slide, thank you. So at Eastman, we have what is called a merit-driven, need-informed process. And what that means is the first thing that's looked at is the file review and the feedback from the faculty for your audition. And then that information is collected, and it is determined what a merit scholarship should be given, and then it is adjusted based on need. So it could go up a lot, a little, could go down a little. So we sort of add or adjust slightly a need component to the merit award. So we have a limited number of funds, and we try to make it as affordable as possible for all of the students who apply to Eastman. So to do that, we ask that you complete both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Even if you're not interested in borrowing, we highly recommend that you do that. That enables us to truly look at what we feel may be available for you to use as resources to pay for college, and enables us to give you as much as we possibly can to meet your need. Remember that the FAFSA information is based on the 2020 income taxes. So those taxes are already done. So you'd be able to start working on those forms now, since they both became available October 1st. And another thing that you should do, again, to all colleges that your student applies to, is if something has drastically changed since 2020, please let the financial aid office know at whatever colleges that you'd like to share that information with. We all know that things change, and a 2020 tax form might not be very representative anymore of your financial situation. So we suggest that you write into the financial aid offices and tell them about what has changed, and then they'll let you know if there's any further documentation they will need that will enable that office to use an updated version of that information.
That's great. Thank you, Sherry. So I'm just going to jump in here at the end because we keep talking about merit and need, and sort of parsing these things is one of the confusing things about applying to lots of different schools. So Sherry covered this, but there's a lot of information there. So I just want to highlight that you're gonna see schools on your list that will tell you that they meet demonstrated need. This means that, well, schools have different ways of defining need, but however they calculate that, some of them will use the FAFSA, EFC, some of them will use profile, some will have their own institutional methodology, as we say, for figuring out what it looks like the family can afford to pay. And then that is what the family will be asked to pay. And all the rest of the package will be a combination of scholarships, loans, work study, federal, state grants, all these different things. Eastman is not a school that meets demonstrated needs. So we have always focused primarily on the merit. We have been shifting our approach a little bit, sort of tamping down how much we will do on a merit-only basis and shifting more funds towards getting closer to meeting demonstrated need where we can. And so that's sort of the balance that we try to strike. And I think you will find as you do your research that there are institutions that will talk about need first. They primarily meet need, and there are others that will emphasize merit, and there are a whole bunch that will be some sort of balance of the two. And so one takeaway from all of this is, one early question that I know a lot of families have is, how can I know now what it will cost me to attend this school? And in some cases, that's going to be easier than in others. So in other words, with those institutions on your list that meet demonstrated need, you can use that net price calculator and you can get a pretty good idea of what your package will look like. With those of us who don't, it's a lot harder to predict. And so that's where it really becomes, and we have, of course, a whole other webinar on and info sessions that we do on the application process and finding the schools that are the right fit, and really encourage you in the direction of making sure you include on your list of schools that are a good fit, including schools that will be affordable, schools that you feel like maybe are a reach both level-wise and financially, and see how things work out. Because with a lot of those schools, you simply won't know exactly what the cost is until you have been admitted and you have received an actual financial aid offer. So I'm sorry we can't completely demystify that process for you, but hopefully this information is helpful. The other thing I want to talk briefly about is, since we talk about merit, whoops, there's a missing slide here. Did we talk about this, Sherry? I think this just sort of reiterates some things that were probably already discussed. First of all, we X'd out that full tuition sticker price on the first slide because none of our undergraduate students actually pays full tuition. That's very important to keep in mind. So this gives you another just further breakdown of that there is a percentage, a little less than half, that are receiving only merit scholarships, which have a range of, certain discount off of the tuition is kind of how we think about it. And then a slight majority are also receiving additional scholarship dollars that are informed by need. And that's where you do see the packages going higher. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that where we do get up to something like close to full tuition or a full tuition offer, there's a need component there that says, this is really what's necessary for the student to be able to afford to attend. And then just some additional information about how many are borrowing and all the millions of dollars that we do spend every year, tens of millions, on scholarships. But I want to focus in on this question of merit just briefly, because this is another thing that schools will look at differently. How do they define merit? What are the most important things? I think for any professional music school, you're going to see that the audition is at the center of the consideration, both for, of course, admission to the school in the first place, and then for what your merit scholarship scenario might be. And we at Eastman certainly do focus on the audition. One way of thinking of the importance of the audition is that you cannot be, however strong the rest of the components of your application may be, they will not overcome an audition that's not strong enough to be recommended for admission to the school by the faculty. So it is really the first stop for us in our process. It is truly where we begin. We don't start looking at the file until we have the list of recommended admits from the faculty based on the auditions and on the interviews where those are part of the admissions process, meaning composition and music education, which have interview components as well. So the first thing we're talking about when we talk about merit is that what I like to call blossoming artistry, because it really is that potential for artistic growth that our faculty are looking for, and this is what gets them excited. And we're going to do a whole other webinar on audition tips and how to be best prepared for the audition. So keep an eye out for that. It's actually not happening until December. But that is important to keep in mind, that it's not perfection that they're looking for, but it's potential, okay? Intellectual curiosity, I say that for a reason rather than saying stellar academics, because as much as we love to see somebody excelling academically, that's great. That's not a strict criteria for admission to our program. You know, it is a professional music program, but we do want to see that you have the intellectual curiosity to be engaged with the academic work that you do have to do. So the curriculum does include non-music academic classes. Not a lot of them if you're just doing the bare minimum of degree requirements, maybe 6 to 8 of them over the 4 years that you're here. But also music theory, music history, courses where you do have to think about music, think about the world in which the music was created and is being made, and have something to say about it in a writing assignment. So that is something that we look for. What that translates to, if you're more interested in, like cold hard numbers than my poetic language here, is we look for a, sort of baseline B average in your academic work in high school. But there again, math is maybe not as important to us as those courses that emphasize reading, comprehension, and writing, because those are the kinds of courses that you'll have to take as a student here. And then finally, this last one, generosity of spirit, is just my way of saying that we do care about the whole person that will come to our campus. It's not just about the audition and how you do academically. It's also how you interact with people, how you contribute to the community that you're a part of, et cetera. This is maybe the hardest thing for us to get at, and the one on which we, sort of take the greatest risk. Not risk, but just sort of, don't know everything about you in this regard. But we do learn a fair amount from those recommendations that we've asked you to secure, maybe through how you write your personal statement or what you say in your personal statement can contribute to our sense of this. And just any interactions that we have, with you. Hopefully you're communicating with us at some point through this process, either by phone or by email or by Zoom, and we're getting to know you a little bit. This is directly tied into one of the things we're most proud of at Eastman, which is just a very strong, close-knit community among the students, a community of support where you see them attending each other's concerts, giving up some practice time in the evening to go hear that wind ensemble concert, to go hear your roommate play their flute quartet concert or whatever it is, and really supporting each other in that way. It also contributes a great deal to just the strong environment of music making, which sounds obvious, but there's just so many student-driven projects going on where the students are themselves coming up with collaborative performances and asking each other to participate. So that brings us kind of to the end of the financial aid piece, and we'll pause here, see if there are any immediate questions about that, we'll certainly take those as we go and play catch up at the end if we need to. But we will leave up here for a few seconds the email address for financial aid, the phone number. It's great to be able to say you can actually call the number now and not just leave a voicemail. And it's good for us to be back in the office finally. We've also got a link here, which is a really long one, and maybe not one that you need to write down or try to memorize. But if you go to our website and you search for outside scholarships, we do have a list of resources on the financial aid site of links to organizations that are sort of clearinghouses for outside scholarships. We touched on these briefly, but these are those scholarships that you, the student, would go out and research and maybe write an application for to an organization or an institution. Sometimes it's your parents' employer. Sometimes it's, the local bus drivers union. I'm stealing from a colleague of mine at another school who talks about the bus driving essay, riding this bus safely, that got him a $500 scholarship for college. So a couple of resources for that there. So let's see. Sherry, I'm going to look for some questions here, and I'll probably throw a couple of them your way. This one is about how does financial aid change if you're applying for dual enrollment or the dual degree at the University of Rochester, as we call it? So that's a great question. You want to start? I might jump in on that one.
So when you apply for dual degree in the beginning, at the onset as a freshman, it is determined at that time which will be considered your primary campus. And how we determine that is Eastman figures out your package, the River campus or the college will figure out your package, and then we present to the student the one that is best in the best interest of the student. So the one that gives them the most grant money, and that becomes their primary campus. And that is the campus that they would speak to the financial aid office. And besides that, that's the only difference. They would do everything else still through Eastman for Eastman classes and the college for those courses.
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing I'll add to that is just to say that the vast majority of dual degree students are getting their financial aid from Eastman. But again, it doesn't have any bearing on anything else. What order you take classes in, or anything like that. But it's just worth tagging on to that for dual degree applicants, just as the financial aid offices are separate, the admissions offices are separate. So there's a separate application. The dual degree applicant is going to feel like they're applying to two different schools, because you're doing the Common App for the undergraduate AS&E, as we call it, Art, Sciences, and Engineering program through the undergraduate admissions office at the River campus. And you have to do the Eastman application through Eastman's website for it to come through to the Eastman admissions office. So that's just one heads up for the dual degrees to look out for.
You can add it later too. That's something else.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do it right at the onset.
Yep, exactly. Are merit scholarships awarded and redone annually for the students, or is it one time done for all years? Is it done one time for all years attending the school? Does that make sense, Sherry? I think it's basically asking, are they renewable?
Yep, all of our merit scholarships are renewable as long as the student remains compliant with our satisfactory academic standards. And all of that is reviewed with the student. So they have to maintain a certain GPA and they have to stay full-time and things like that. But it is renewable. If you're not going to borrow, you don't have to file the forms again in the following years. So. Yep.
And there's no catch there. I mean, the GPA we're looking for, I think I mentioned before, when you're applying, we're looking for kind of a baseline 3.0 in your academic work in high school. And we just kind of expect you to maintain that when you get to college. Let's see. So do students stay on campus during the summer? Are there summer costs to take into consideration? Travel costs for performances? It's a good question. So the short answer is no, the dorms do close in the summer. We do have, I mean, there's a handful of students who will stay around to sort of assist and be advisors for summer programs that we have. But even those programs don't provide housing through the entire summer. So students who stay in Rochester through the summer will either be, in many cases, subletting an apartment from somebody, maybe an upperclassman who has an apartment off campus and they're subletting for the summer, or finding their own place for the summer, or finding a roommate they can live with for the summer. Sherry, I don't know if you want to address that in terms of how it impacts. I mean, we do talk about travel costs and factoring those into the cost of attendance.
Yeah, travel costs, we simply allot an average amount of money for what it would take a student to get back and forth to home. Typically, when it comes to establishing a financial aid budget, that would give you a certain eligibility to borrow more money if your costs were extravagant. And if a family runs into a problem where they find that they're borrowing in order for their student to fly home and they need a little bit more to cover it, a lot of times those are things that we can adjust on an individual basis. But you will find, or if you can't find it, you can ask us what the travel amount is that we had built into your student's individual package, and we can review that with you at that time. But we do averages up front.
Great. And then you had mentioned that if somebody has a change of circumstances or special circumstances that aren't captured by the forms, that they should write to you. When should they do that?
You can do that really, I would say anytime starting in November. But please make sure you indicate that your student, number one, their name is clearly on it. And number two, that it is for the fall of 2022. Just that helps us a ton in keeping track of where that document should go until we get to the point in the process where we are actually reviewing things.
Great. And then there's a question about tuition increases. Does it increase yearly? Yes, we do look every year at the increasing costs that the university sees and that Eastman sees. Lately, that's been averaging somewhere around 3%, maybe 3.5% a year, although last year was quite a bit lower than that. I'm still anticipating, it's going to return to sort of the 3% ish annual increase. So that's definitely something. And we will, when you get your financial aid package, we will point that out and show you what that looks like over the 4 years. That's something you want to keep in mind. Added on to that question, which is a great add-on, is there an option to study leadership in addition to music? And would this affect the tuition fee? So the other thing, I'll take the second question first. No, there's not much that you would do as an extra here that would affect your tuition fee. So that includes all kinds of things like taking an academic minor at the River campus. There's no extra cost for that. Taking lessons on a secondary instrument. There's no extra cost for that. And certainly taking courses through what we call the Arts Leadership Program, which is a robust offering of courses designed to help you develop your entrepreneurial skills and think like an entrepreneur as a musician, versus, just preparing to go out and take every orchestra audition that there is or apply for every teaching job. These are courses that will get you thinking about, well, how do I create my own opportunities? What if I want to start my own ensemble? How will I have the skills to do that? So those are absolutely an option, and there's no additional cost for those. I think you can take, there's a cap, what, Sherry, of 28 credits, which is, pretend you didn't hear that. That's too many. You know, our curriculum has students taking 16 to 18 credits a semester without really thinking about adding on extra things. But then we do have dual degree students and students doing minors who do decide to take more credits and manage it just beautifully. But their costs are the same. So let's see. Would a music ed music performance combo be all with Eastman, or would that be dual? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so we have double majors actually in music education and performance. We call it double major. I like the term combo, but we might start using that. Especially with the jazz majors, because we have a lot of jazz performance majors who do music ed too. They play in combos, that's a different thing. Anyway, so we have double majors, yes, absolutely. It is all through Eastman. So all of our music education curriculum is through Eastman. These are courses taught by the music teaching and learning faculty at Eastman. And although they will include courses like psychology and some sort of general education courses, if you think of them that way, most of those are courses that are at least cross-listed, meaning you can take, they offer a section at the River campus or at the Eastman campus. But I think that's really just like one or two classes where you would even have a choice of where would you take it. Everything else that you're required to take is going to be at the Eastman campus. So, and that's a very popular combination, specifically performance and music education. In fact, we'll be doing another webinar coming up later in the season with the music teaching and learning faculty. Well, they will talk about all of the different opportunities within their department, even if you're not doing a double major. There are courses that you can take in pedagogy just to sort of beef up your teaching skills, you know, because take it from me, you will all teach at some point. So it is good to actually learn a bit about how to do that effectively. How does financial aid work for transfer students? Sherry, I'll let you add to this, but in a nutshell, I mean, the process is really very much the same. You're considered, you know, in the same audition process for the same merit and need-based dollars that our first year admits would be considered for. There are just some different considerations, like, you know, how much have you borrowed already? Well, it might limit how much you're able to borrow depending on how long it takes you to complete your degree. But essentially the process is the same. Does that cover it? I got the thumbs up. All right. Let's see, for vocal performance majors, are accompanist fees an extra fee in addition to tuition, or is it included in tuition? So for the students, this is one of those yes and no questions. So you do get a certain amount of accompanying sort of built in, no extra charge. And this is because for the pianists, they have to do a certain amount of accompanying as a degree requirement, because this is a skill that the faculty want them to cultivate. But it's, you know, maybe especially for a singer, probably not enough for every situation where you're going to need an accompanist, because you do have lessons and coachings with the vocal coach. And then maybe extra auditions that you're doing and those kinds of things. So, but this is really where, you know, it doesn't mean you're automatically going to have to pay professional rates for an accompanist either, because you're going to have friends, and maybe you can cook, or maybe you have a car. So you have some, you know, bartering ability there to convince somebody to accompany you for your upcoming coaching or whatever it is. But you will get a certain amount of accompanying. Everybody gets a certain amount of accompanying at no additional charge. Let's see, do you have summer programs for high school students to live on campus and get an Eastman experience? Yes, that feels like one of those scripted questions that we would have written. Yes, we do. I'm glad you asked. Specifically for high school students, there's a 3-week classical music studies program and a 2-week jazz studies program. And there's information about those on our website. So if you just go to esm.rochester.edu/summer, you will find information about those programs. It's a little early in the year. I don't know if they've published all of the dates and deadlines yet, but you will find information about programs that we've run in the past, and those are ones that run every year. So lots of information there. Basically through the month of July, those programs are offered, and in every orchestral instrument and voice, piano, as well as jazz. Financial aid, is financial aid at Eastman need blind or need aware? So this is actually, we're sort of crossing terminology here because the need blind thing has mostly to do with admissions. And if you're saying you're need blind and admissions, it means that we don't pay attention to the applicant's ability to pay as part of our decision of whether or not to admit them. And we are need blind in that regard. But at the same time, we're not meeting full demonstrated need. So financial aid is definitely need aware, meaning, you know, we are asking for the information, FAFSA, CSS profile, to get a sense of what the family can afford, and we're trying to get as close to that as we can. So I hope that answers that question. And I'm going to take one more, and then we're going to move on to career paths, because and we'll take more questions at the end, but we're already veering away from the financial aid topic, which I think is good, because it means maybe we've covered all of the information that you need on that for now. But here's the last one. Is there any chance that my performances will be evaluated on my YouTube before the audition, so I'll be aware of how much scholarship I'm allowed to receive? That's a really interesting question. I understand what you're asking. The answer is no, just because we won't be able to develop a sense, because of the merit-based character of our financial aid. It's a comparative thing. So it's not strictly you're playing in isolation. If I listen to it today, I think that's pretty good. That's worth $20,000 of scholarship. That's not how it works. What has to happen is we have to hear everybody. The faculty have to hear everybody in relationship to each other. And then we have to make a determination based on not just the audition, but the full file review in order to determine what the package will be. So that's, again, our inability to tell you ahead of time what it will cost. You have to go through the process and get that actual financial aid offer. All right, so I'm going to move it along now. We'll do another, trying to keep it at about an hour for you guys, because I know, you know, it's a lot of Zooms and you're at the end of the day. But we're going to talk for a bit about our alumni and what they do and what it is. And we've actually gotten into it already a little bit because you had such great questions related to curriculum and what you learn. But we're going to get into kind of the why and how that helps you out there in the great wide world. This first slide is just more sort of like our, you know, a pretty marketing approach to talking about our alumni, and then we'll dig into some more just sort of cold hard facts. But this just is, you know, these are facts. You know, we do have alumni that are performing in all of the top 10 major orchestras and all of the major military bands, opera houses, and as keeps coming up, in many times creating their own performance opportunities, which often takes the form of their own ensembles. And we'll see some examples of those on a later slide. Many of our alumni are also actively teaching at every level, primary, secondary, college, university level, running arts organizations and institutions. I get to go to a meeting tomorrow with Mark Volpe, who is retiring now, but he was the chief executive of the Boston Symphony for many, many years and is an Eastman alum. And, you know, the Boston Symphony is a great example because, you know, at one time we had an alum who was running the place. That's Mark. We had an alum working in their marketing office, and we had, I think, 3 playing in the orchestra in various instruments, as you might ordinarily expect. But just a great sort of microcosmic image of how our alumni find themselves prepared and positioned to do any number of things in the arts world. And of course, we train great composers too, so they're out there writing award-winning music and winning all those composition prizes and being commissioned. From your perspective, you're considering going into a Bachelor of Music degree. What is the path going to look like? This is a common question that we get. We do know that at Eastman, in our performance undergraduate program, well, actually, I mean, overall with our undergraduates, roughly 75% of them do go on to graduate school as kind of the next step. And in many cases, that is a master's degree in music. And it may or may not even be followed by a doctoral degree in music. That's really, when somebody has decided, I want to teach at a university, I really need that academic credential to be Dr. So-and-so and to teach at a university. That's when the doctorate comes into it. So many of our doctoral students have come back to do that doctorate after some time out in the profession. And so that's not always an immediate thing. But 75% do go on to graduate school, and some of those are not going to graduate programs in music. And this is really important to keep in mind. This is one of those facts that is perhaps at this stage of much greater interest and perhaps some comfort to the parents than it is to the students. The idea that you can do an undergraduate degree in music, and I'm not talking about dual degree students here, I'm talking about students who just did a Bachelor of Music degree, and then be prepared to go on and do medical school or do an MBA in business or do a law degree. How does that work? Well, there are all of these electives, and you're at a university doing the professional music thing. So you can take those accounting and statistics and economics courses, or take some of the sort of pre-med school track classes, biology. I don't know what they are. I'm not even a science person, so I'm just going to stop there. But you know what they are if that's your thing. The law degree. I mean, this is one of my favorite alumni stories. Is an alum that I've kept in touch with who did her undergraduate degree in flute. Sadly got into an accident shortly after finishing her degree here and couldn't play. She injured her lip and could not play the flute, and went to law school, and is now, actually she's playing the flute again, but professionally she is a lawyer, and she writes contracts for a major university in California, or university system in California. And it's all got to do with copyright and intellectual property. And this became her area of interest because she's, her initial interest in law was to help all of her musician friends with copywriting questions and contract writing and things that they needed help with that she wanted to be able to help them with. And she will tell me that Eastman prepared her for law school because she had to, she learned a bunch of transferable skills, and I'm gonna get to those in a second, so I won't get ahead of myself. So in 2015, we actually did an alumni survey, which, by the way, is really hard to do. And this is why you don't have lots of schools posting lots of statistics about their alumni and what they're doing professionally, and what percent are doing what and all of that. Because just assembling the email list for enough of your alumni that you can call it a robust pool for a survey is deeply challenging and almost requires a whole office of people by itself. But the university was doing it, and so we were able to sort of tag along with that process, and we were really glad we did. So we learned a bunch of interesting things about graduates who mostly graduated between 1990 and 2015, which means it includes me. I won't tell you where in there I fall, but I was in there. And what we found was, first of all, this number I thought was pretty high. 64% who had completed a bachelor's degree were working solely in the field of music. And when you added those who were working in the field of music and also in another field, it shot up to 84, which I thought was pretty impressive. 16% were working solely in a non-music field. And so this, again, this is lots of people like the contract writer, at the University of California. We have several of our faculty have a dentist who is an Eastman alum, and so go figure. And I'm not talking about the Eastman Institute for Oral Health, which is a school at the University of Rochester, but actually went to Eastman for his undergrad and then dental training afterwards. And here's that statistic again about teaching. And this, by the way, is misleading. So when I said earlier that you will all teach, you will. It just won't necessarily be your profession 10 years from now, but you're going to be teaching at some point. But pretty high percentage of our alumni are performing, also teaching, and then a significant but smaller percentage working in those administrative or leadership positions. So this was actually, I mean, we've had so many anecdotal ways of talking about our alumni, and just, you see them listed in the concert programs, you see them teaching at all of our peer schools, as we would call them. You see them out there writing music, performing, recording, all of that. We've always, been wanting to have these numbers to sort of back up that sense that, yeah, we're really doing something right here, and our alumni are benefiting from it out in the workplace. And circling back to that lawyer and, what's going on there, what is the skill set that you're acquiring? Again, this is maybe, something that right now is more interesting for the parents to think about than for the students, which is totally appropriate, by the way. My advice at this stage is always to the student, like, keep your eyes on the prize, go for it. It's what I'm telling my 13-year-old daughter with her love of ballet. I don't know where that's leading. Hard to know, but I'm pretty sure she's acquiring some transferable skills and one heck of a work ethic, I'll tell you. So that's happening in the field of music too. And, based on what we see going on, I think it's maybe, that I feel comfortable saying it especially happens through the Eastman curriculum, because there is a lot of rigor throughout the curriculum. It's not just the studio. It's not just the ensembles where you're going to be held to a high standard. It's also in the humanities classroom. It's also in the theory classroom and, almost workshop, I want to call it, as you're developing those musicianship skills. It's every faculty member you come into contact with works not only with undergraduate students, but also with doctoral students. We have PhD students in musicology and theory, music education, composition, and you're working with the same faculty. And so that has a lot to do with it. So the depth and the strength is throughout the curriculum. So this now lawyer, former flutist, was telling me that, she learned her communication skills at Eastman. She had to talk to, as she put it, robust personalities, I think meaning the faculty, and, negotiate, like, what pieces was she going to play on her senior recital. Talk to her chamber music partners, collaborate. Musical collaboration is something that sounds like, ooh, that's a lot of fun. Let's play music together with our friends. But it actually involves a lot of give and take and a lot of listening to other people's ideas, and maybe having strong opinions that what they're suggesting is not really the way to go, but being willing to try it anyway, and then having to construct the words to say, I don't think that really worked, and still maintain that relationship. All of these skills, being a creative and critical thinker, our students work for hours in the practice room alone, which every musician does, but they do it having come from studio class with our faculty, where they're, learning how to think about how to tell someone in a creative way how to fix a problem. And then they're having to problem solve on their own in the practice room. And goodness knows you have to be organized just to stay on top of your schedule, just to manage your time. And that's definitely a skill that you will learn here as well. So all of that fills me with confidence that that you're on the right track. You should see it through, and that's what enables me to look a parent in the eyes and say, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. This slide just shows some examples of our alumni and just some, I mean, this is just like one of those impossible slides to make because I just had to stop at a certain point, but there's just so many more names. And I'm always afraid that I've got, because we have like kids of alumni applying to Eastman every year. And I'm always afraid that some alum is going to be in the audience. Are you out there right now? Saying, hey, what about me? I'm not on there. So it's very easy to leave people out because there are just so many that are doing amazing things. But these are just somewhat organized by instrument area. We've got a bunch of pianists over here, a bunch of singers over here, composers. Here are the string players down there, a bunch of jazz musicians, and then some ensembles sort of sprinkled throughout. So these are just some, I'll leave this up for a while if you want to like Google some of these names and see what are these people up to. You can check them out there. And then the last thing I'll say about this as a sort of resource for checking out like who are Eastman alumni and how can I easily sort of see a bunch of them in action. We did put together a Spotify playlist. So if you just go to Spotify and search for Eastman Alumni Mix, you'll find a really big and ever-growing list of alumni. And on our website, on the admissions site, which you'll find just by looking for the Spotify symbol there, there's actually like if you're like me, and you want to like sit down with the track sheet and know, what piece is this and who is the composer and what movement is it and what is the name of the larger recording, you can follow along there. But it's a good just sort of one-stop, where can I find a bunch of Eastman faculty Eastman alumni doing cool things. I still need to put together an Eastman faculty Spotify list, but man, these things are time consuming. So we started with this one. Okay, so I'm going to catch my breath. We're going to stop there and see if there are any more questions. We did have another one pop out, and guess what, Sherry? It's related to financial aid. Do outside scholarships reduce financial need?
So financial need is a number that gets calculated. So what the financial aid that the student is awarded does is it helps meet that need. And I will say that the majority of the time, an outside scholarship does not reduce any other forms of financial aid that the student is currently receiving. In most cases, if it does reduce any financial aid that a student is receiving, it's a loan. If the parent had borrowed a PLUS loan for the full cost of education, it might get to reduce some of the borrowing there. But since we don't meet 100% of the need for, I would say, the majority of students, there is always room where an outside scholarship should come in and it would change nothing. But if we are to reduce something, we reduce self-help first, which would be loans, and then work study. And at all costs, we try not to have to reduce any kind of scholarship funds.
Yeah, very hard to think of an example where we've had to do that. But it can reduce your costs. So, an outside scholarship will reduce your bottom line. That's the key thing. So that's why we emphasize the importance of that. And doing the research now, because it's, it can be one of those things that sometimes, you're prompted to think about by being presented with your financial aid offer. And it's like, ooh, I could also use some outside scholarships. Often that's, at least for the following year, that's sometimes too late. So definitely start now on that research. Here's another question. Are campus visits available to meet the faculty? Yes. So we are open again for visits. We encourage you to contact, you can do this by contacting the faculty directly. We do have all of their email addresses on our website. So just go to the Eastman website and click on faculty, find your instrument area, and you can do that there. I would just say that, if you do schedule a meeting with faculty, let the admissions office know too, because you could probably also set up a tour and attend one of our information sessions. That's an opportunity not just to talk to admissions staff, although you've seen how fun that can be, and so you probably want to do more of that. But also to meet some current students. The current students lead, we have work study students who lead the tours. So that's a great opportunity to talk to some current students about what their experience is here, which is an important connection to make. But absolutely reach out to faculty. I'm going to just try to find that link and pull it up here real quickly. In the meantime, there's a question about how we support graduates with career services and students. So when I was talking about arts leadership coursework, which is something that's offered through what we call the Institute for Music Leadership, this is an office, a department almost at Eastman that also houses our career services. So we have a dedicated career services, career advisor just for Eastman students and alumni. And she will work with, alumni several years out sometimes, certainly with current students, and really everything from just looking over a resume or a cover letter to helping them get in the right direction, for researching what some opportunities might be. And again, it all ties into the arts leadership offerings and, making sure that you also are picking up some of the skills to figure out how to look for those opportunities and how to put yourself into situations where you get to sort of sell yourself, as it were, and so you need those materials. So everything from your website to your social media presence to how you make videos, how you present yourself online, what you send to potential presenters of actual live concerts, which thank goodness are a thing again. All of that can be covered through that office, and career services is part of that. I'm going to type. Did I do this already? I'm sorry, I can't think and type at the same time. I think I just put the link in the chat to the faculty, where you'll find faculty email addresses on the website. So absolutely go and check that out. Here's a question. Can we comment on the racial diversity of the undergrads? Yeah, absolutely. The short comment on that is it's a work in progress. We are a more diverse campus than we were 10 years ago. We've been working very proactively on that for at least that long, which I can attest to because I've been at Eastman now for, yikes, almost 13 years. And we have been prioritizing diversifying the class and, through everything what that means, recruiting with an eye towards that, awarding financial aid with an eye towards that. And certainly, with all of the high profile focus on this, it has only become a higher priority at Eastman. But, it's important to people like me that it's known that we've been working on this for some time. Now, that's not something to brag about because, we arguably should be making more progress than we have been. It is slow going, but we're getting there. Right now, just numbers wise, when we talk about underrepresented minorities in higher education, just the way that the higher ed, industry, if you will, defines that is students who say that they are either Hispanic, Black, Native or American or Pacific Islander. And Asian American students are not considered in higher education to be underrepresented. So that percentage of underrepresented students at Eastman has grown from really single-digit percentage to, for the undergraduate class, 10 or now 11% of the class. So, as a percentage of the population, we'd obviously like it to be closer to, to a higher number. But we're definitely working on it. There are a lot of initiatives underway looking at what we can do to make Eastman as inclusive, feeling a place for all of our students. And the biggest thing that we did on this front was the commission that the dean assembled last summer to interview and talk to our students of color, alumni of color, faculty of color, staff, and understand what their experience was and just listen to what their experience was. And, you know, in all honesty, we did learn that it was different from what a lot of us thought of as the Eastman experience. And so we're working very hard to make that the same for everybody as much as we can. Let's see, do we consider the 529 plan as a factor in financial aid amount? Sherry?
We don't look at the 529 plan and adjust the aid that we would give you. How much you have in a 529 plan is one of the questions on definitely the CSS profile. I think it may also be on the FAFSA as part of your assets. So it's part of that formula. But besides that, we don't look at that as something and weigh it heavier.
We're going to take a couple more questions, but before I do, I just want to put up the next slide and just encourage everybody to, you know, in case you're wondering, like, okay, now what? You know, the obvious thing starting at the bottom might be, okay, go back and, you know, if you haven't already, start your application, get started on FAFSA and profile. And attend another webinar. So I'm gonna plop into the chat here the link for signing up for the upcoming webinars. Next one is this Friday, and it's a current student panel. So this will be an opportunity to do a Zoom like this, but without so much of the talking heads, and just to have more of a conversation with some current students. One of my colleagues, the admissions counselor who supervises the student workers will be there to sort of run things, but it's really going to be the students talking about their experience and engaging with you on that experience. So that's this coming Friday, and there will be a bunch more. There's a whole list there that I can't rattle off the top of my head, but that link will take you to all of them. So we'll hope to see you back at a future webinar soon. And just a couple more questions here. Are faculty willing to do trial lessons via Zoom if travel is a barrier? Generally speaking, yes. I mean, I can't think of anybody who's saying like, no, I'm not doing that. Obviously, our faculty got really adept at Zoom teaching, even those who I never would have thought would have been able to figure that out. I mean, you know, they had to do it starting last spring. It was the only mode of teaching for finishing off the spring semester in 2020. And we have been back in person in last year in a hybrid mode where all of the instrumental and, you know, performance instruction was happening in person. Classroom stuff was online. This year it's all in person again. But yes, by and large, the faculty are open to doing Zoom lessons. Absolutely. So just make sure you ask them about that option when you contact them. And then for English, for international students, do we accept IELTS? Yes. What is good question. What is the score? I'm gonna fall back on a link here again because I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So let me just find it and I will drop it in. But we do have on our website all of the scores that we accept, which include TOEFL, IBT, Duolingo, and also IELTS. So there's the link to the English requirements, and that will give you all the score comparisons and all of that too. Okay, so we've zoomed past 9 o'clock, but thank you for staying with us. This has been fun for me. I hope it was informative for you. And again, there's a link in the chat for registering for future webinars. Next one is this Friday with current students. I hope you'll check it out. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Sherry, for bringing your financial aid expertise. And thanks to everybody for being here. We'll hope to hear from you soon. Take care. Have a good night.